Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to the Sociology Honors Info Sesh. Um, my name is Zoe. I'm your Sociology Peer Advisor. I also am a member of the current cohort. We also have three more panelists here to talk about their research, and I think it's going to be a really great meeting. We'll also have time for a Q&A at the end, so please hold your questions until then. Um, but we can go ahead and get started um, by discussing our research. So, did any of you guys want to go first? Okay, I'll start. So like I said, my name is Zoe. I am currently writing my honors thesis. I'm exploring the relationship between inclusivity and accessibility by using UC Davis as a case study. So I'm doing qualitative research by interviewing students with disabilities here at UC Davis to further understand their relationship with their physical environment and how navigating their everyday life um, is influenced by the space around them. So currently, I am doing a lot of interviews. I'm doing my recruitment, and at this point, it has gotten more challenging, but it's also gotten more exciting because I feel like every time I get stuck in my research, all of a sudden a new possibility opens. I learn about a new concept. I have a new way to understand the people that I speak with, but also to understand the physical environment of UC Davis. And so for me personally, I feel like I've gained so much from this thesis experience. I'm really excited to see where it goes. And what my thesis ends up. I'm going to be writing into spring, but once I finish up in spring, I also will be presenting my research at the undergraduate conference, the undergraduate research conference, the URC. So if any of you guys are also presenting research or want to come, we would love to see you there. There are going to be other people from the honors thesis cohort who are presenting their research as well. So it's a great way to learn more about the research. I will turn it over to the next panelist, Zoa.
Hey everybody, my name is Zoa. I am not the echo. I'm doing my research on looking at how um, the effects of global warming and social demography interact to produce health outcomes, specifically in the Central Valley of California. Um, I am one of, I think, only two in the thesis cohort who's doing more quantitative. So if you have any questions about that specifically, I'd be happy to answer those. I'm doing my work with Professor Lerma, in case any of you know her or have questions about working with her. Um, I'm also presenting at the URC. And I'm also in the honors program. So if any of you are here because you're doing or want to do a thesis or considering doing a thesis for your signature work, fourth year signature work, I can answer questions about that as well. Yeah, I don't know.
Hello, I'm B. I'm doing my research. It's a qualitative research on the trans experience in Shasta County, which is a very conservative and rural area within California. So I'm looking at like how that might differ compared to conservative and rural areas in the rest of the United States and then more urban areas within California. So that kind of like intersection. My mentor is Professor Joss Green, if any of you know him. Um, right now I'm on my like I think 11th interview. I'm looking to start coding and transcribing more within the next couple of weeks. Um, I'm hoping to get at least 20 interviewees, but that's because I'm graduating in the fall quarter, so I have a bit more time to work on it. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. It was glitching earlier, that's why I asked. My name's Chloe. My research, I am analyzing the relationship between transgender and cisgender siblings in the transitioning of identities process to determine the role a cisgender sibling plays in that process, different modes of support for both sibling, and whether or not a cisgender sibling is enough of a significant other to overpower negative reactions from others. I've currently done about 10 interviews. I'm doing qualitative research. I've transcribed all of the interviews and I've done some preliminary coding on that as well. And my advisor is also Professor Green, if you know him as well. And I think that's it.
Hi, everybody. So this is Professor Hamilton. Or do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm the person who leads the class for the honors program, and I provide a lot of support, try to provide a lot of support to each of you who writes a thesis, both before and after, as well as during your senior year. I'm sorry I can't attend this meeting, so I just wanted to pop in and say hi and encourage any of you who are interested to reach out to me to talk about your interests and ideas.
Thank you so much. As we discussed, we all have advisors that we work with, but Professor Hamilton acts as a secondary advisor, which is really helpful because you can't always get in contact with your advisor, or sometimes you just have a really random question. Many of us had to do IRB, the Internal Review Board, and that's riddled with questions when you're trying to get your thesis reviewed. So you could start, usually you'll do it with like qualitative interviews since you are working with people. Um, but there's so many little things that you have to get approved and you have to fix before the IRB approves it. So just all of those questions we were able to bounce off of Professor Hamilton really quickly. Um, so now that you heard from all of the panelists and quickly got to meet Professor Hamilton, I will turn it over to Carolyn for more of an interview overview. Just interviews on my mind. More of an overview of the program.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the honors thesis. I know I've talked to some of you individually, so you probably have already heard some of the spiel already, but I just want to make sure everybody kind of knows what the honors thesis program is about and the expectations of it. So for the honors thesis program, it's an opportunity for you to do your own research. So you've heard several of our panelists talk about the research that they're doing, and as you can see, they're on a wide variety of different topics. So anything related to sociology obviously is fair game. So since sociology is so broad, we usually end up with a very wide variety of interests and things like that. You can either do qualitative or quantitative research, as our panelists have both been doing, and you would basically come up with a research question that you want to do, or a topic, and generate that into a question. And you would work with your faculty mentor to kind of figure out what is the best way to kind of do that research. So you may have some ideas yourself, but they also may help guide you or give you ideas if you don't know like the best way to research the question that you're trying to come up with. So as everyone mentioned, they all have different faculty advisors. And so that is something you definitely want to get started on soon if you can, but start reaching out to faculty and having conversations about potentially doing an honors thesis program if you're going to be doing this next year, next fall. The reason for that is it does take a little bit of time to connect with them and get it all settled and situated and figuring out what you want to do. So good ways to identify mentors would be people that you know, people that you've been going to office hours, you've taken their class, you've met them, or potentially people that have the same research interests as you, same topics, things like that. So if you go to the sociology webpage and you click on the people tab and then faculty tab, you'll see the list of faculty there. All of those faculty who are active next year. We do have a few that are retiring and whatnot, but all the ones that are active will be available, to do honors thesis mentorship. So you can click on their name and it will describe their research interest. So you can see if there's anybody that matches something that you're considering. And you can just reach out to them and let them know you're trying to do an honors thesis and would like to have a conversation with them. You don't have to have it set in stone as far as, your exact research question or anything like that. It could just be a, a general, I'm interested in this. Let's talk about it kind of initial meeting. So they're there to help you through the whole process, starting from the beginning and figuring out your topic and narrowing it down to the research question, to the methods and all of those kinds of things. As we've talked about, you will also be taking the honors thesis class that Professor Hamilton will lead. There's 194 HA in fall that you'll need to take and 194 HB in winter quarter that you need to take. And so that's been very helpful since we've implemented that class, because it does give you a bigger support system, because not only do you have now an additional faculty member helping you out in Professor Hamilton, but you have all of the other people in the cohort that are also working on things and going through it with you and can help, answer questions, keep you motivated to get through it, because it is a lot of work and it can get a little, overwhelming at times. And so, having other students going through that same process definitely helps. So we've had a lot of success having most of our students finish the honors program since we've implemented the class, where it was not quite as good before we implemented the class. So I'm happy to say it's been helpful and successful to do that. So not all departments have that. So you're lucky. In our department we do, and we offer that extra guidance. If you are part of the honors program and you're doing this as your capstone work, you do have an option of doing this through the honors program, but I highly recommend that you do it through sociology. And the reason for that is I've talked to students who have tried to do it the other way, and they do feel a little bit lost and overwhelmed and not sure what they're doing. Where when you have the class, it's kind of more organized, and so it's less chaotic, and like I said, much better support system. You most likely will have much better success. I've talked to a few of our faculty who have sponsored people through the honors program and sponsored students through the SOC, and it's so much easier for them as well to help you, because you have the class that's kind of teaching you a lot of things you need to know. So I would highly recommend going that route. I know sometimes people are thinking about it. I do often get questions too, people that are double majoring. Can you do an honors thesis in both departments? And the answer to that is yes, but it is a lot of work, and I probably wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I would probably pick one or the other. I have known one person who did do it in two departments, but she stayed an extra year and did one the first year and one the second year. So it is a lot of work, as I'm sure our panelists can tell you, that it takes a significant amount of time. So I think that's kind of the logistics. So like as of now, things that you would want to be doing is trying to find faculty members, thinking about your research topic, what you might want to be doing. The proposal is typically due in the summer. It's been due at the end of August. Professor Hamilton is considering moving that deadline up a little bit. I'm not sure what the deadline will actually be. The reason for that is Zoe had mentioned IRB, and if you're doing like qualitative research, you got to get approval from the IRB committee, and sometimes that takes a long time. And so when it takes a long time, it sets our students back. They don't actually get to start researching as quickly. So she was hoping maybe if we made them do sooner, people could start actually working on some of that stuff in the summer. So I'm not sure when the deadline will be. I'm guessing it'll probably maybe be in July-ish instead of August, but I will touch base with Professor Hamilton and see when that will be, and send that out to everyone so they all know when the deadline will be. So that's pretty much the process. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, or if Zoe wanted anybody else to speak at this point.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the class, which I think sets this experience apart significantly from students that I've spoken to who are writing their thesis in other departments who don't have the course. So like Carolyn mentioned, you do have your cohort of other students who are writing on all sorts of topics. So sometimes it can feel a little intimidating because people are just in all different places. However, you're able to get support from people. You're able to learn from their experiences, the things that they're doing wrong, things that they found that can help you. And it's just a really great way to build community. And I mean, for me personally, like I said, I was a little intimidated at first, but because it's such a great group, I really was able to find my voice. And there's so many people who are there to just support you. And I think that is a common experience for most people. I think we've gotten pretty close as a group. I was told we are one of the larger groups. There's 14 of us, so a variety of perspectives and brains to pick from. Um, but we meet every Monday for 2 hours. And in that time, we check in about our research and things that have been going well, things that haven't been going so well. And Professor Hamilton or other cohort members will give us advice or ask us questions to help improve. Then throughout the quarter, we'll have different periods where we work on different parts of our thesis, like different sections. We had a draft of the lit review due, we had a draft of our methods section, and typically we'll do a peer review. And Professor Hamilton looks at all of our drafts that we send in and also provides advice on improvements that we can make going forward. But so there's that course, and then you would go out and work with your advisor. The advisor sets the expectations for the course. They work with Professor Hamilton because essentially they're grading your thesis at the end of this experience. So they set the expectations, how long it should be, if you're doing qualitative and you have interviews, how many interviews you'll need, and just what they want to see at the end of your time writing your thesis. So altogether, it's just this really supportive network that supports you in taking this huge step and writing this huge research project. And it's so far it's been a really great experience for most of us, I would say, if not all. Do you guys want to add anything else about your experience in the class or any nuances?
I guess. Just to like add on to that, I feel like the like weekly meetings were a huge, like very important resource for all of us. Like if any of us are running into trouble or like don't have enough interviewees or are worried about the IRB deadlines or whatever is going on, there's always somebody who can like offer you advice or offer you help that you wouldn't otherwise get if you didn't attend the weekly meetings. So definitely really good resource.
I
I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. I agree with that. I know a lot of us actually dealt with imposter syndrome too, and like not really knowing what we were doing our first quarter of the thesis. And since kind of everybody was in that same state, it was nice to meet weekly and kind of grow in our confidence with one another, like not only to do research, but know that we can actually write the paper. And if we're going through struggles, at least one other person is going through the same thing. So it was really nice to have that camaraderie.
I also, in terms of like literal support, there's like a really wide variety of things that people are covering, but a lot of people are doing qualitative things like interviews. And there have been things like people just talking about like, oh, I can't find people to interview, or like I'm having trouble recruiting. And then someone else in the cohort being like, oh, I know someone who's like in the target group you're trying to reach, like I'll give them your flyer or your contact information, and then you can try and like snowball sample from there and things like that. So even when it doesn't feel like necessarily there would be a lot of like direct help or direct application of things, like we definitely always have been like giving each other a hand, or it's been like very helpful to like share resources and have people to just like work alongside with.
I would also say it really keeps you on track. Like most of us are writing 60 to 80 pages, and that's super daunting. And sometimes it can really get to you, like, how am I going to complete all of this work by whatever deadline? And so having those weekly check-ins, seeing where everybody else is at, getting support from our peers, it's so helpful. It just really keeps you motivated and keeps you in check to get it done. Um, I had another thing I wanted to discuss. Oh, yes. Before we open it up to a Q&A, I wanted to ask the panelists two questions. Um, First of all, if you guys could talk about finding a advisor, how you went about that process, who you thought was the best match for your research, and secondly, what your favorite part about this experience has been so far. Does anybody want to start, or do you want a minute to think about that? Okay.
So the way I found my mentor, probably not how most people do it. I went to speak with Professor Hamilton first because she had mentioned in one of the classes I was taking with her that she was the advisor for like the thesis cohort. And so I went and talked to her and said, here's what I'm interested in. Um, I wasn't even really planning on doing a thesis, but she convinced me to do a thesis within like 5 minutes. And then she provided a list of professors that I could reach out to because no social professor I had taken had really done research in something I was interested in. And so she provided me a list of professors, and I just cold emailed them. I was like, hey, I'm so and so. Here's a bit of background. Here's what I'm interested. Here's how it connects with your research. And I just set up Zoom interviews, and that's how I ended up getting my advisor to be Professor Green. So definitely don't be afraid to just cold email a professor. And it also helps if another professor recommended you do that, so it's not as like just jarring for the professor to be like, "Oh my God." My favorite part, aside from what we had already talked about with like the camaraderie and like with our cohort, has honestly been doing the interviews so far for my research. I really appreciate the conversations I've been having with people, and especially my research topic can be difficult for people to talk about. And so, just the emotional capacity it takes to have these interviews with people and developing that throughout doing the interviews has honestly been my favorite part because I'm hoping to be a researcher in the future, be a professor. And so, it's really given me great insight into what my future looks like. And so, kind of a lot of things. Pretty much the whole thing is my favorite. I can't really choose any specifics.
I can kind of go off that in a way about the advisor. I decided really late that I was doing a thesis. I was originally had a whole different project in mind for my signature work for UHP, and then I was like, this is way too like contrived and not a good idea or something that's like feasible for me to take on. So I ended up deciding, I talked with Carolina actually about it, and she talked about the 194 class, and I had done a paper that I wrote for a class that I was like an open research paper that we got to do for Professor Lerma, and I really enjoyed it. And it was received really well, and I was like, I would love to expand more on that. So I just ended up reaching out to Professor Lerma and being like, hey, I want to go further with this research and do something bigger with it. I am a double major. I'm sociology and statistics. So the way that I'm kind of doing the thesis is the paper was qualitative, and now I'm doing my own quantitative research. I think in that respect, having an advisor has been a little bit more challenging for me because Professor Lerma is really knowledgeable about the topic, but not my methods. She does not have a lot of quantitative experience. So in that respect, Professor Hamilton's been really helpful because I basically just like stayed after class and was like, hey, I'm really struggling with this because I know how to analyze numbers, but I don't have any of the experience of actually like retrieving and getting the numbers myself. Like I've never done that, and it's proving to be a lot bigger of like a roadblock than I expected it to. And she did the kind of similar thing that Chloe was saying, which was just like, okay, how about we talk to, because I had talked to some of my stats professors and they were like, I don't really want to touch sociology, like, it's the things. And I was like, okay. And she was like, why don't we ask for help from one of the professors who does stats in the social department? And I was like, that's a really good idea. And she did the same thing of like, I like cold emailed, but like CC'd her to be like, look, this is legit, and like had her like name on the email and stuff. And then, so now I'm kind of working also with Professor Hibble now as well. So he's not a full second advisor, but he like kind of is. And my data has like immediately taken off after like one meeting with him. So even though you have like one main advisor, you're also not at all limited to talking to other faculty, especially if you're doing something that has like mixed methods or multiple areas of interest. Like it's not going to be like something where like your advisor should be like totally supportive of that and even help you with that if you need to find other people with like different expertise or experience. So, yeah, just that's my sort of deal. And then favorite thing, um, I think honestly just like the schedule. I don't do great with long-term big projects. I tend to like let them kind of snowball into something bigger than they need to be and get like overwhelmed by the like enormity and just sort of procrastinate. So having the weekly meetings and like checking in and like reminding about like all of this is achievable and doable and people do it every year and like it doesn't have to be a big deal. And then also the like we have assignments for the class, but they're not like hard enforced. It's just like smaller deadlines we get given to sort of like work on it in smaller chunks, which I think just makes it so much more approachable. So just having the routine, I think, has been really enjoyable for me.
Um, yeah, I highly recommend emailing a professor that you've really enjoyed in the past and just having a casual meeting with them where you could just talk about like I guess first I would make a list of everything that you're passionate about, everything that you want to learn about, everything that you've learned about in past classes and want to know more about, and then go over that with a professor that you've really enjoyed in the past, and then kind of the way I went about it was like kind of brainstorming with Professor Green, like talking about my ideas. And then he was the one who actually gave me the idea for my honors thesis because I was talking about how I took UWP and I was doing a paper on the queer experience in rural areas. And then he was like, hey, that sounds interesting. Why don't we expand this to like where you came from and like your experience and then your friends? And then it became this whole thing where I was like, wow, I did not think about this before. So I'm really glad that I talked to somebody about this and got that kind of passion sparked in that. Um, yeah, and then I guess also my favorite part, similar to Chloe, is like doing the interviews, just because it's really cool to get to like learn more about this thing that I was already like so interested in and like this area that I grew up in. And it's really cool to have like these in-depth interviews that like kind of shed light on something that doesn't seem to be really talked about academically yet. Um, yeah, I think that was all I had to say. Yeah.
Then I will finish it up.
Can I
So
ask one more thing, Zoe?
yeah,
I thought of something or two things actually that I wanted to add. One, going off of what you all were just talking about having multiple mentors. I get the question a lot, does it have to be a sociology faculty that is my mentor? And the answer to that is yes, but you can have multiple mentors, as they were mentioning. So your main person would be a sociology person, but I've had, for example, someone who was doing something related to child development, and they worked with Professor Hibble in our department, and then they had someone in the human development department as their second mentor. So I just wanted to just mention that is possible if you do have someone in mind that's in another department, as long as everybody's on the same page and willing to work together. It's not a problem to have multiple people helping you out with this. And then the other part I just wanted to mention that I forgot to mention earlier is I talked about how there's the 194HA and the 194HB. Oftentimes students are still working on their thesis in spring. It's actually a rarity that they're done in winter. We do have a few, and I think there are a few that are going to finish this year in winter. But most people continue on in spring. If you connect with me early enough, I can help you work on your academic plan and potentially get 199 units in spring quarter for this, so that you're not taking a bunch of courses to reach full-time status, and doing on your honors thesis. So the earlier you can meet with me if you haven't done so already, I know I've met with some of you already, where we can figure out your academic plan, the more helpful that's going to be. So that way you can take, the courses that you need to take as soon as possible, in like fall and winter, to kind of get it so it is more manageable for you to finish. You can talk to Kelly and Michelle as well, but most likely they will refer you back to me. So if you want to just make the appointment with me initially, that'll be just save you time. So when you're in Oasis and doing the appointment schedule and you get to the calendar, just make sure my name's selected at the top, and then you can see my schedule and go ahead and schedule that appointment.
Thank you. Yeah, that is really important. Please don't feel like you need to limit yourself to just working within sociology. If you feel that there's something you're super passionate about and it falls outside of sociology, even though I personally feel like you can apply sociology to anything. But don't limit yourself. This is your project for you. And if you want to gain knowledge with sociology and with another department, um, I encourage you to do so. Yeah, so just to finish off what the panelists were discussing, I started my journey looking for advisors with my question already in mind. I knew what I wanted to write about, and I was taking Sociology 100 with Professor McCourt, who isn't here this year. And I would go into his office hours all the time to just talk about the course. And I just told him about my idea one day. I really just wanted somebody to hear what I had to say and just I don't know. I was wondering if it even was something that was worth researching. And all of a sudden, he was just giving me all this information. He was like, you can work with this person, and like you could take it this way. And it was really cool to see somebody encouraging me to conduct my own research. In that moment, really felt like a scholar. I felt like I belonged in this space. Um, and I was really encouraged to do so. However, I had two different directions that I was going to go for this thesis, and it was either take a more intersectional lens or take a more social policy guided pathway. And I felt more connected to the intersectional lens because that is my favorite part of sociology. To me, that really is what sociology is. To me. Um, but when I was taking intersectionality with Professor Lerma, it was just the perfect class. I felt like she really understood the way that I thought about the world as well. And I was taking the class with Zoa and also started to dip my toes into this research by writing my final paper on a related topic. And so after that course, I asked her if she would be interested in being my advisor. I told her that I wrote my final paper on a related topic and just told her what I wanted to do in the future and all sorts of things because I want to go into occupational therapy, so it is related to my thesis topic. Um, and just immediately, like I was so scared when I sent my email. I was so scared. And she responded in like an hour and she's like, "Yeah, I'd love to do it. Let's do it." Like that's perfect. And so I was able to email Mr. McCourt or Professor McCourt and be like, sorry, I think I'm gonna work with Professor Lerma on this one. It's just closer to the direction that I want to go in. And it's been a really great experience. I feel like she has been immensely helpful in my growth as a sociology scholar, my growth as a researcher, and just like someone who's going into the professional field. So I've been really happy to have that connection and support from my advisor. My favorite experience, I think was also my first interview. It just suddenly felt really real. Like I'm doing this. I was able to look back and realize like, wow, like I've done so much to get to this point and I really am conducting my own research. And so it was really exciting to do so. It also went surprisingly well, like so smooth for a first interview. So it was really great. And it's been a great experience for me. Um, yeah, so that's all I have to say. Why don't we go ahead? Oh, before we go to Q&A, I just wanted to say if you have any questions, want to talk about any nuances, want some support, come to drop-in hours. We can talk all about the honors thesis. Literally love talking about it when students come in. So I would love to talk about anything you guys wanted to discuss, or if you want some support in finding an advisor, let's talk all about it. So now let's move on to Q&A. Did anybody have a question that they wanted to start? And also feel free to put them in the chat if you don't want to speak up. If not, I have a list that I can pull from. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add lastly? Is there? There is. Okay. So what do you want to do after UC Davis? How do you think your honors thesis experience will help guide your choice? So, like I said, I do want to go into occupational therapy. I My topic is related to that field, but also you need a writing sample for some of the schools. And so I have this amazing thesis that's going to be the best writing I've done, double checked by my advisors, and I'll be able to turn that in as my writing sample, which I am very happy to do. I feel like it'll be a great representation of the best of my abilities here at Davis. Do any of you guys want to answer that question as well?
I am super indecisive. It took me like 2 years to declare a major and then another year to declare a second one. So the thesis for me is really, I had done internships the summer after junior year with qualitative research with some grad students. And I was like, I still am feeling indecisive with the between the stats and the soc. So I was like, the thesis really is an opportunity for me to get some hands-on experience of like what does it feel like to do quantitative research. I also was pretty indecisive about whether I wanted to do grad school or not. And so doing the thesis sort of keeps that door open for me. Like I have something to submit. I have that as a writing sample. As of now, based off my experience, I'm thinking I want to go into working with like data specifically in a social context. I'm casting my net pretty wide, but like NPR, KQED, PBS, a lot of, I always also work at the radio station, so I just kind of like media and broadcast in general, but mostly data analysis is kind of what I'm looking at right now.
Well, I know I mentioned earlier, but I'm hoping after I graduate to go into an MA PhD program for sociology to eventually become a researching professor. Um, I've kind of always wanted to do that. Luckily, I've known what I want to do for a long time. And so this thesis is pretty perfect for that because it'll give me um, an exact insight into what grad school is going to look like. I know our class is pretty identical to a grad student seminar where we all sit around a big table. We kind of are working on our projects on the, outside and we're working on class together. So I think if you're planning on going into grad school or anything with research in the future, a thesis is pretty imperative that you do it just because it gives you an exact insight into what your future would look like. So you can see if that's something you would actually want to do as well.
Um, I don't know what specifically I want to do after UC Davis. I know that especially after this experience, I'm definitely like extremely passionate about research. So I've been thinking about either interning at some nonprofit organizations or something that can like help me continue doing more research because that's definitely something that I've learned that I really like to do.
I would like to add that you this experience doesn't have to be something that will become anything after you leave UC Davis. It can just simply be you wanting to have this experience before you leave UC Davis. I think in many ways it has become that for me. Though I said it will become a writing sample, it's just me ending my time here. And I want to prove to myself being here that I have gotten so much from being a student, associate student at UC Davis. So this has really just been like the accumulation of all that I've learned in sociology. And I'm really happy that it will become that. I did see a question that was submitted when you guys are RSVPing. Let me find it. I thought it was pretty.
There's another question in the chat that I can answer real quick while you're looking that up, Zoe. Someone is asking about whether or not you have to have completed the 4 upper division sociology classes before applying. Our preference would be yes. The reason for that is you need to have enough sociology knowledge and writing experience and learning how to analyze things in a sociological way and all those kinds of things to actually be successful doing the honors thesis. But if you're concerned about that, I would recommend making an appointment with me and we can kind of talk about your academic plan. If it's not possible for you to do that, we could try to help you petition to have that requirement waived. We have an undergraduate programs committee, which consists of faculty and grad students, and they can review exceptions to those requirements. So I just wanted to put that out there, that if there is any of the requirements that you're not meeting, but you're super close to them, like sometimes instead of 135 units, you might have 133 units or something like that, we would most likely approve something like that. So we just have to get approval for it. So if you have concerns, just make an appointment with me and we can talk about your individual situation.
I just wanted to add that we're getting towards the end of the session, so if you do have a question, please ask it or put it in the chat. But while you guys are thinking of that, one of the questions that was submitted was, what are the most important factors to consider when choosing the topic for your honors thesis? And I think this is a really great question. So like I said, I already had a question in mind when I started asking advisors, potential advisors. But I would say, um, if you have an area of interest that you want to go into, do a little bit of research, try and find something a bit more specific, and then just talk to your professors. It doesn't even have to be a potential advisor. I would recommend just talking to your professors because they've all done research, and so they can help you narrow it down. They can help give you a direction, and they can give you aspects to think of that you didn't consider when you were just weighing this potential option to research. What do you guys think? Any factors that you considered?
I think first of all, consider what makes you really excited and passionate, like in past classes, like what was your favorite class, who was your favorite professor and why, and stuff like that. And then also realize that like it's okay to narrow it down to fit your time constraints. Like think about when you want to graduate, how fast you want to get it done, how much time you have, and then talk to your advisor to kind of narrow it down to fit that goal for you.
I would add to your question can change. That's something we've talked about like in the class. Like you can enter like 194 or something or enter this project with an idea and then actually like look at how it's gonna like operate or how you would actually like actualize, like operationalize that idea and then go like this is not suitable given the time constraints, or I've thought of a different question that's similar but seems like more interesting. You can totally like change. Obviously, there's going to be some amount of time that you have to kind of like pick a direction or a decision, but it's a lot more flexible than I think I initially thought it was going to be going in. And I would also say, again, doing kind of a non-traditional soc thesis, I have a research question, but I think it's a lot more broad than most of the cohorts questions because mine is sort of like the data directs where I'm kind of going with it rather than asking, like interviewing people and asking questions based off the data I want to collect. I'm doing something more like where I'm dependent on what data exists that I can then use. So I was felt a lot of stress about like getting the exact right question and then it not getting the having the numbers that lined up with that. And then my advisor was like, you really don't need to be this stressed about it. Like just generally start like combing through things and it'll kind of like actualize itself. So I think the only other thing I would add is your question doesn't have to be anything like revolutionary. Like a thesis should, you do have to in some way argue about like why what you're doing matters or is different. Like that's kind of part of the thesis is argumentative in some way, but like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can absolutely do things that are very similar. Like part of research is confirming and being able to replicate results and things like that, especially doing something quantitative. I was like, I don't want to make the exact same like models and stuff that everyone has. And my professor was like, like you're trying to take on something that like professors are like doing over multiple years. Like the thesis is an exercise in learning these skills, learning the process. So like absolutely taking on something that feels easy, I guess, or achievable is like totally fine. And it's new to you. And at some point, something is going to come up that's like, oh, that's different or new, or I didn't expect that. And that'll be your like thing that's like, this is why my thesis is different from like the existing literature or something like that. So, yeah.
I will add, you are working on this for a substantial amount of time. Um, and that's why it is really important to choose something that you would be okay with working on for that long, because sometimes you're like, oh my God, I am so over this topic. But of course, there's always a new way to, and just a new perspective that you could take that really helps shape your thesis into becoming something so well-rounded. And, the quarter system moves so fast, and it seems like even though the thesis is so big, like it's just going on by and you're finishing it, you're getting through it, you're taking all these steps that you probably might not have imagined when you first started the class. It's a really great experience. So are there any final questions before we go? If not, I would like to thank the panelists. Thank you all so much for your insight and for your time. And I would like to thank Carolyn for our overview. So yeah, if you guys have anything that comes up, please contact me or Carolyn, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. Have a great
And
day.
Professor Hamilton's really great about answering emails and would definitely love to talk to you all. So I'm sorry she couldn't stay for today, but definitely email her your questions. She will get back to you. She'll set up Zoom appointments with you. She's really passionate about this honors thesis project and program. So don't hesitate to reach out to her.
All right. Thank you, everybody.